How you react is so, so important because it will teach your kids way more than you think it will. Let me give you an example. My 5-year-old daughter came to me one day and she said, "Hey, Dad, I know that you like to hike this one particular mountain that's near where we live. And I want to hike this mountain with you." Now, I got to tell you, we do live quite close to a mountain that's 11,700 feet tall approximately. Let me say that again, 11,700 feet tall. It's about a 15-mile round trip, and you go up thousands and thousands of feet. And it's a hard mountain to hike. And my 5-year-old daughter came to me and said, "Dad, I want to hike this mountain with you." Now, it's possible that many dads could think, and even in my mind, you could think, you're too young. I can't take you on that mountain. You're just too young. You can't do it. And truthfully, that thought crossed my mind. The thought to say, "No, I don't think you're going to be able to do that. You're too young." Well, here's the thing. Luckily, instead of doing that, I actually told my daughter, I said, "Well, it's a long hike. It's a hike that's going to take us all day. We're going to have to start early in the morning and hike all day long and hike until nighttime to get all the way up on top of this mountain. And it's hard to do. Do you really want to do it?" And she said, "I really want to, Dad." I said, "What's going to happen when your feet hurt? Your feet probably are going to hurt if you're hiking this mountain." She goes, "Well, I'll probably take a rest and then keep hiking." And she was persistent about it. And I said, if you really want to do it, maybe we could try. And I actually took her on some other hikes that weren't quite as intense. In fact, much less intense to see. And she did pretty well. She really wanted to do it. And so I decided to take my 5-year-old daughter up this big mountain. Now, here's the thing. She did it. She hiked to the top of this mountain at 5 years old. I got to tell you, you've never seen so many people on the trail high-fiving my daughter. When we got to the top of that mountain, there was literally people on the peak of the mountain that stood up and gave my 5-year-old daughter a standing ovation. Now, one of the things that wasn't about that. It wasn't about trying to look good or have my daughter do something crazy. What it really was is about letting my daughter have an opportunity to do something hard and build confidence. And I'll tell you this, she got down off that mountain and she started telling everybody, "I hiked Timp. I can hike Timp. I hiked to the top of this mountain." And it gave her confidence. The beauty of this was really seeing how my daughter's confidence went up when I allowed her to do something hard, something even harder than a lot of people would think. Now, here's another thing. My daughter was asked by a local congregation leader to give a talk, a speech, in a big congregation that had about 1,500 people maybe showing up. I don't know exactly, but it was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people show up. And some people say, "Well, you can't let your 8-year-old daughter speak in a conference that big." But instead of doing that, by reacting and saying, "I think you'll be fine. You can hike a mountain. You could probably give a speech. It won't be a big deal. Like, what happens if you mess up?" And you can walk through it and say, "What happens if you mess up?" Well, she got up in front of this group and she actually started singing a song and she did mess up. And because we talked about it before, she goes, "Oh, I messed up. No big deal." And just kept going. It was kind of funny. I almost want you to see her doing it. But she was, because I reacted in a way that was, "You can do this," rather than, "Oh no, you can't do that," her confidence went up. We talked in another segment about if your son or daughter comes and asks you to build, to make a peanut butter sandwich, how can you handle that? And we came up with the idea that it's better to let them struggle through and make the peanut butter sandwich. So here's another example. What you're saying and doing is so important. Like, let's say your kid falls down and scrapes their knee. Now, some parents go, "Oh my goodness, coochie coochie coo, I can't believe you scraped your knee. Are you okay? Are you okay?" And they act panicked and they act like, "Oh my goodness, let's get a Band-Aid on it," and go like this. And truthfully, they scrape their knee, and yeah, it does need to be addressed. But what happens is the unspoken communication that you're giving to your child is that you're fragile. And what happens is when you send that message to your kid, and then let's just say they scrape their knee when you're not around. So they're playing at school or they're walking through the neighborhood or whatever, and they scrape their knee. That message that you sent kind of becomes ingrained in them. It's like they almost can hear your voice and they think, "Oh my goodness, I scraped my knee, I'm fragile," and they panic because they heard you panic. So what you really want to do is react in ways that are productive and calm. Now, of course, if they really were injured themselves and they really need to get to a doctor, you'd of course want to get them to the doctor and do it quickly. But if it's a minor scrape on a knee like that, you might just say, hey, it looks like you scraped your knee. That happens. I've scraped my knee. You're going to be okay. And then you can take care of it. But you do it in a calm way so that they know that, hey, my dad said I'm going to be okay. And then when they scrape their knee later, they know, oh, my dad said I was going to be okay. I'm going to be fine. And they have that confidence knowing because they heard you be confident when they scrape their knee. They know that when the next time they scrape their knee, my dad was confident, so I can be confident. Your voice is going to be in their head for a long time. Be careful what you're doing with it. Now, here's another example. Again, we want to see the strengths and build on those strengths, not try to sell our kids on the fact that they're not as strong as us. We want to see their emerging strength and build on it. So here's another example. One of my children came to me and said, hey, Dad, we want to sleep in the backyard. Now, here's the problem. It was December, and it was supposed to get down to about 20 degrees that night. So 12 degrees below freezing. Now, as a dad, I could have said, hey, you know what? You're going to freeze to death. You can't go out and sleep out there. It's too cold. What I did say instead was something different. I said, you know what? And I'm grateful that I did. I said, you know what? Well, you really want to sleep outside? Well, you know it's going to be really cold. It's going to be below freezing. How would you, what do we need to learn about sleeping in the cold? And we talked a lot about how, if you get wet, it makes your body actually loses body heat way faster when you're wet than when you're not. If you want to sleep outside, you got to make sure you have enough layers, maybe a good mummy bag, a hat, because you lose a lot of the heat out of your head when you're outside. And we talked about all these things, and they said, yeah, we still want to sleep outside. And I said, okay, well, let's talk about the principles. And so we actually got the layers and the hat, and we made sure that we popped up a tent in the backyard, and I went out and slept in the backyard with my, out in the backyard, and had a great time with my children, showing them that they could do it. Now, we did it responsibly. Obviously, I wasn't going to send my kids out to the backyard with no preparation, without me being aware of exactly what was going on. But what it does is it makes them more confident, because you can choose to see the strengths in your kids. In other words, say, my kids want to be strong like me, and I'm going to try to give them or maybe I'm not strong, but as strong as I can be. I want to give them opportunities to stretch themselves and grow in confidence. And when you do that, when you let them do hard things safely with them, of course, make sure it's safe, and you do things with them, they have this neural pathway. You're building trails again in their minds that like, hey, my dad has confidence in me, and I know I can figure this out. Do you know what I'm saying? So, if they forget their lunch or they forget their homework, sometimes maybe it's good not to rescue them, because then they might be a bit hungry, but the next day they'll remember their lunch. And of course, unless there's a medical reason or something that's really important that they have that. But I'm saying you're basically saying, I think you're strong enough to, if you miss lunch, you're going to be okay, and you're going to remember it, because I believe in the responsible part of you. And I believe in the part of you that's going to learn to be strong. And so what I'm trying to do is say, what are the strengths in my kids, and how can I as a dad make those stronger? Because the ultimate goal is I want my kids to be able to survive without me. It's one of the ways we protect our kids, is we make them strong while they're in our care, and then they can protect themselves. How can I teach my kids to be strong? And I've got this time with them where I can teach them, and it's fun. It's adventurous. We can go on hike mountains together. We can go camp together. We can go learn new skills. We could go learn karate, or we could learn to play the piano. We could do all kinds of things together. And what I'm really trying to say is, you can do this. You got this. And then try to react in a way that is going to build on their strengths, not their weakness. So the assignment today is, I want you to go back and I want you to think about a time where you reacted poorly to something your child did. When I say maybe you sent a message that you're not good enough to do this, or mom and dad have to do this all the time because you're not strong enough, or whatever it is, somehow where you reacted poorly to something, or you send the message that, hey, you're not good enough, you're not confident enough. And then I want you to write out on the worksheet, do the work, exactly what you're going to do the next time that same kind of situation comes up. So I want you to think it through. You're going to create the situation in your mind in a positive way that you've blown in the past. And we've all blown it. What we need to do is get better. And this is one of the best times to do it. Do the work now while things are calm. How am I going to react to my child? How am I going to help them understand it when it's calm? How am I going to do things differently than I did before? Do the work. You've got this. Good luck.